This is a continuing of part two. Where I left off at part one, and it says once again, the Houthis launch missiles at Israel, which I believe that's central. The Houthis launched missiles at Israel, so they was getting missiles from both sides, from Hamas and central Israel, and the Houthis was launching missiles at Tel Aviv as well too. It says the groups launched a missile towards central Israel at 4 a.m. Thursday morning, and it fired missiles towards the Negev on Wednesday, and also target. It says the Egyptians sent out through the week. It says what is the look? It said what is it looking to do? It wants to show it still has some capability and seeking to call what it makes. It's a bluff by the Trump administration. It says millions of Israelis woke up by the air raid sirens on Thursday morning that had been routine in December and early January. It says with the Houthis launch missiles every few nights. It says the Houthis controlled a swath of Yemen equipped with long-range drones and ballistic missiles, mostly based in the Iranian technology transfer. Iran could be held responsible for continuing Houthi attacks, the White House warned. It says over a week, however, Tehran has tried to distance itself from the Houthis, claiming that they make their own decisions. The Houthis claim they have targeted the Ben Gurion airport using a ballistic missiles known as the Palestinian II. The operation marked the fifth consecutive day of effective and responsible retaliations against the U.S. aggressions, particularly following the attacks on civilian infrastructures in the Yemen's capital of Sana'a and several Yemen provinces. The Houthi spokesperson, Brigadier General Yahya Sari, said the groups have intensified their efforts to target enemy warships in the Red Sea, including the aircraft carrier, the USS Harriet Truman, and the accompanying naval vessels, he said, adding that the U.S. would fail in its attempts to bomb the Houthis unto submission. Retaliation against the U.S. aggression. The statement was made after the U.S. carried out more airstrikes against the port city of Hodeidah and the city of Sitdown. The U.S. strike has killed 53 people, and the Houthis said. The attacks on Israel are an attempt by the Houthis to show that Israel remains a reachable target, even under the watch of the eyes of the new U.S. administration. That means that they feel they can wheel out their missiles from hiding places, such as caves and complexes, and launch them. The pose challenge for the U.S. and Israel, as it shows their air power alone may not be able to stop the missiles. During the Gulf War in 1991, Saddam regime was able to launch scores of missiles at Israel and from Iraq, Western Anbar Province, despite the massive U.S.-led coalitions on Iraq. This leads to a great Scoob hunt, where the U.S. and U.K. and others sought to find the scopes. The hunt was not very successful. It is hard to find missiles and their launch technologies. It says technology has progressed since then, but it remains to be seen whether the U.S. and Israel can put a stop to the Houthis' aggression. This is the book of Matthew 24, verse 7. For nations shall rise against nations, right? The pro-Iranian groups going against the Israel Defense Force, and the pro-Iranian groups of Houthi rebels going against the United States armies. So those are signs of nation against nations. For nations shall rise against nations and kingdom against kingdoms, and there shall be famines and pestilence and earthquakes in diverse places. It's the book of Ecclesiasticus, chapter 3, verse 8. And in times of love, in a time to HATE, in a time of war and a time of peace, right? So we're definitely living in a time of HATE and a time of war as well too. It's the book of St. Mark, chapter 3 and verse 24. And if a kingdom be divided against itself, the kingdom cannot stand. Well, that's what we're seeing. Modern day kingdoms being divided and modern day nations being divided. St. Mark 3 verse 25. And if a house be divided against itself, the house cannot stand. And this is the book of Second Esdras. Second Esdras chapter 9 verse 3. It says, therefore, when there shall be seen earthquakes and uproars people the world, right? So increasing earthquakes and uproars people the world. That's what we're seeing. Second Esdras chapter 15 and verse 14. It says, woe to the world and them that dwell therein. Second Esdras 15 verse 15. For the sword of destruction draweth nigh, and one people should stand up and fight against another with swords in their hands. And we know the modern day sword is the weapon. And that's what we're seeing. The Israel Defense Force going against the Houthi rebels and going against the Hamas as well too. And you got the United States armies going against the Houthi rebels, which is a pro-Iranian group. And then you got tension between Iran and Israel hitting up. So that's what you call one people should stand up and fight against another with swords in hands. And that's what we're seeing. And this is Second Esdras 15 verse 15. It says, for the sword of destruction draweth nigh, and one people should stand up and fight against another with swords in hands. Second Esdras 15 verse 16. For there should be sedition among men, betting one another. They should not regard their kings nor their princes in the course of action stand in power. Right, that's what we're saying. And as it says, once again, the Houthis retaliate against the U.S. attacks with missile strikes on Israel, analyst reports. That's March the 20th, 2025. Get to some more news articles that leads up to prophecies updates. It says United EU, European Union leaders deploy breakdown of the ceasefire in Gaza. The EU will continue to wait further easing of Syrian sanctions, leader says. It says the IDF chief staff, it says when we talk about defeat Hamas, we are talking about everywhere, right throughout the region of Western Asia. Well, they spoke about that previously. And it says protesters demand release of hostages blocking major Tel Aviv streets. Right, that's the uproars of people in the world. It says the IDF, which is the Israel Defense Force, to conduct military exercise in Golan Heights, which they previously did, and explosions to be heard in the area. Right, so they can have more military exercise to prep more escalation between Hamas and the pro-Iranian groups throughout that region. It says the army close to taking control the presidential palace from military, the RSF group, Sudan TV says. Bring up that Luke 21 verse 25. It's the book of Luke 21 verse 25. It says, and there shall be signs in the sun and the moon and the stars upon the earth, distress of nations will perplex and seas rage roaring. Right, so we're going to be seeing the increasing distress of nations will perplex and seas rage roaring. And we're going to be seeing the signs in the sun and the moon and the stars. And upon the earth, distress of nations will perplex and seas rage roaring. 441, call halal, Yahba Shemel Shah. Let's go to RT News. It says the Tesla's attacks on domestic TERRORISM. White House says the Trump administration has warned of several penalties as Tesla facilities deal with arsenal and gunfire and vandalism. Right, because I believe one happened earlier in January, and the recent one happened like a couple of days ago. And it says the White House press secretary Colleen Livet has condemned the recent attacks on Tesla dealerships and the vehicles and vicious violence. She applauded the U.S. Attorney General Pan Bondi for investigating the incidents as domestic terrorism because this is what they are. Levate says federal investigations are underway after a series of violent incidents targeting the electric car company. Oh, what's up, white man? This is Steve. It says federal investigations are underway after a series of violent incidents targeting the electric car company. The attacks are being driven a backlash against the CEO Elon Musk, who is advising U.S. President Donald Trump as the head of the new Department of Government Efficiency Dodge. He is overseeing the budget cuts and federal workforce or reductions. It says in an interview on Fox News on Thursday, Levet vows that Trump will ensure the hard-setting penalties for those responsible. And what I can tell you is that the President Trump condemns these violence. He is determined to restore law and order in our country. It says as a result, the Tesla collision center in Las Vegas this week involved in mocktail cocktails and result in damaging at least 5 vehicles. And this is the book of Luke. This is the book of Luke 21 verse 25. And there should be signs in the sun and the moon and the stars upon the earth. Disgressive nations will perplex and seize their born. Once again, this is the book of 2nd Ezra, chapter 9, verse 3. Therefore, when there should be seen earthquakes and uproars, people in the world, right? So increasing earthquakes and uproars, people in the world. That's what we're seeing. It says the U.S. judge blocks Trump's military alphabet lifestyle ban. It says Putin sends letter to Syrian leadership. Right, because Russia is allies with Syria. Because they've been allies for a very long time. And you got military bases over there in Syria as well, too. I mean, you got military bases of Russia over there in Syria, I meant to say. It says the ICC weaponized as Philippine political feud expertise reports. Militarize Ukraine to the teeth, Finnish president. It says Hamas fire rockets at Tel Aviv as Israel expands ground operation. Well, that's another sign of wars, rumors of wars between the Israel Defense Force going against Hamas and the Houthi rebels, which is the pro-Iranian groups going against the United States armies over there in the Red Sea and over there in Yemen as well too. And this is a news article published by Aaron Boxman and Adam Ranscombe and Patrick Kingsley from the New York Times News Service Syndicate Stories, updated March the 20th, 2025 at 5:18 p.m. And it says Israel expands ground operation as Gaza fires rockets at Tel Aviv. It says that from the Jerusalem, it says the Israeli military expanding its ground operations across the Gaza Strip on Thursday as Hamas fired rockets at a central Israel for the first time in months. and what it says, and what looked like a slide back towards a full scale war, right, which lasted for about 16 months. It says the Israeli soldiers began raiding parts of the. Let me X this out. It says the Israeli soldiers began raiding parts of the city of Rafah in southern Gaza. The military says, as well as the near Beit Elia, if I pronounced that right, in the north of the enclave. Those moves came days after Israel announced it has recaptured parts of the uh, Nasiram, Netziram, the Korad, which besets central Gaza after the withdrawing from the area as part of the January ceasefire with Hamas. There were no reports of casualties from the Hamas rockets, which were fired at the coastal city of Tel Aviv. It says the Israeli military says 3 rockets were either intercepted or fell into the open areas. It says the escalation the escalation of the hostilities came after a 2-month ceasefire in Gaza collapsed this week with the deadly airstrike aerial bombardment in the territories, which the military says it has targeted Hamas and Israel, arguing that the trust could not continue unless Hamas released more hostages still held in Gaza, while the Hamas accused Israel of violating the ceasefire agreement, right? Because they was accusing both each other for violating the ceasefire agreement. So that's why the ceasefire collapsed within the last 2 months. It says that the potential end game. It says the potential end game for this round of fighting, however, remaining far from clear. Israel and Hamas has seemingly incompatible conditions for the next steps in the ceasefire. Have the renewed Israeli assaults have yet to force Hamas to accept its demands. Hassam Badran, a senior Hamas official, said in an interview Thursday that the group was unwilling to disarm its military wing and a key Israeli precondition for ending the war. It says, if you do that, you're giving the occupation of the opportunity to kill without any Palestinian response, Badran said from Dura Qatar. He added that Hamas has delayed firing rockets until Thursday in the attempt to give meditations more time to pressure Israel to halt its attacks. But as Israel continued its assaults and the death toll rose in Gaza, he said, it says Hamas have given indications that it can respond. The renewed assault has killed more than 500 people in Gaza over the past 3 days, including the scores of children. The Gaza health minister says Thursday the figures do not distinguish between civilians and combatants. The United States, which had been seeking to broker a extended of the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, has thrown its weight behind the Israeli offense. Karlan Levy Levet, the White House spokesperson, told reporters Thursday that the President Donald Trump fully supports Israel and the actions that have taken in recent days after Hamas rocket attack. The Israelis military warned Palestinians in Bani Shulia in southern Gaza to flee, saying militants were firing from the area. The Avliki Adaria, the Israeli military spokesperson, called it a final advance warning before an Israeli attack. It says Hamas said its least 5 senior members of the Gaza leadership, among hundreds of people killed in the Israeli strikes on Tuesday. The Israeli military says Thursday that it had killed at least 2 of other Hamas security officials. It says in Gaza, the escalation conflict prompted panic and fear among Palestinians who hope for a longer respite from the violence. Many said that they saw little hope in the resolution to the coming crisis soon. Al-Dabu Karim Al-Sari, 28, a doctor in the Gaza city, says the trust has given Palestinians a few weeks to recover from the years of hunger and deprivation, the borders crossing, and the reopening and aid has flown in. Now, whatever food remains is sold at a skyrocket price. Wow! It says, the out of reach for many who lost everything in the war. He said. It says he accused the Israeli breaking the ceasefire, but he also said that Hamas leaders should turn over dozens of Israelis and foreign hostages still held in Gaza to spare Palestinians more than Israeli attacks. It says everyone is exhausted, says Al-Harzani, if I pronounce the name right. It says, how long will we have to keep living like this? It says Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to step up pressure on Hamas until the group's capitulates and release more hostages, around 24 living Israelis and foreign captives, as well as remain more than 30 others, and believe. It says to be Gaza's continue to Israel. It says Hamas officials say their demands for the release of the captive remain unchanged, including an agreement to end the war. It says the full Israeli withdrawal from the Gazas and the release of more Palestinian prisoners. It says a 15. It says the 15-month war with Gaza kills more than 48,000 in a territory, including thousands of Jews. It says according to the Gaza's health ministers, Hamas sets off a conflict by leading a surprising attack on Israel on October 7, 2023. It says it killed more than 1,200 and saw 250 taken into hostages back to Gaza. It says the ceasefire in January. It says secured a initial 6-week truce, while meditators sought to bridge gaps between the Israeli and Hamas comprehensive truce. It said, but did collapse in early March with a broader. It says without a broader agreement. It says almost meditating gross Israeli broke humanitarian aid from the entering Gaza, including food and medications, and a apparent effort to pressure Hamas and the negotiations to free more hostages. Later, the Israeli government cut off electricity and provided in a desolation plan. It says meditators like the United States were trying to reach a deal to extend the trust, including the permit ending the war with the release of the remaining living hostages. Steve Witkoff, Trump's Middle East envoy, pitched a proposal that would extend the initial ceasefire in exchange for the release of more captives. Bandar, the Hamas officials suggested. It says Bandar, the Hamas officials suggested that the group was willing to show more flexibility over a deal to start talks. Meaning the Indian War. Previously, Hamas has spoken wanted the release of the living and slain American Israeli sold hostages in such an agreement, keeping more than 50 others in the Gaza. It says the problem isn't the numbers. Bandar said they are acting positively with any proposal that leads to the start of negotiations of the permanent trust. This is the book of Joel. This is the book of Joel, chapter 3, verse 9. It says, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war. Wake up, mighty man, let all the men of war draw near. Right, that's what we're seeing over there in Western Asia. You have the pro-Iranian groups going against the Israel Defense Force, Hamas going against the Israel Defense Force. And you got the Houthi rebels, who's a pro-Iranian group going against the the Israel Defense Force, Great Britain, and the United States as well too. It says, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war. Wake up, mighty man, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. Right, so you're going to see more military exercise drills, more military training, and more nuclear escalations are heating up between the nations as they being gathered over there in Western Asia. Joel chapter 3, verse 10, it says, beat your plowshares and swords and plunder hooks and the spears and let the weak say I'm strong. Right, that's what we're seeing from the Houthi rebels. They're not letting up. Even though they catch a lot of heat from Great Britain and the United States and the Israel Defense Force and their allies, going against the Houthi rebels, which is a pro-Iranian group. But they not letting up, as you seen in that news article. So they're going to continue to target the Israel Defense Force, Great Britain, and the United States, and anybody that's affiliated with them, with allies, having ship and docks over there in that area, over there in the Red Sea, in the Mediterranean Sea, over there in the Gulf of Aden, and over there in the Arabian Sea as well too. It says, beat your plows, says the swords and the plumbing hooks and spears, like the big sailors going. This is the book of Revelation, 11 verse 14. AKA mechanic man for the qualification. Certified for the qualified job. This is it's the book of Revelations 11 verse 14. Second world pass, whole third will come quickly. Right, second world pass, whole third will come quickly, which is going to lead into Armageddon, Armageddon 1. So with that, hopefully this sit-down lesson was edifying for part 1 and part 2 of the prophecy updates as of March the 20th, 2025 on this Thursday afternoon. So with that, I'd like to give all praises and glory and honor to Yahweh Ba'Shem, Yahweh Shai Ba'Shem Akadash, Barak Thumb to the elders and apostles, Akim Akwaf, until next time I say Shalom.